You're listening to
Gavin Richards.
Burwell Community Radio.
Burwell Community Radio, with local news, views and interviews. Village Voices.
So we're joined on Burwell Community Radio now by Ben Blows, and if you don't know what Ben's been up to, then where have you been? But because I think he's pretty much a household name now in the village and surrounding areas. But looking back on the BBC News website, it describes in mid-December how he was taking on a new challenge, running 31 marathons over 31 days in December. And in mid-December on the BBC News website, it goes on to say that Ben from Gaisley in Suffolk is taking on this 812-mile feat to raise money for children's brain tumour charity Tom's Trust. And speaking on day 15 of the challenge, 48-year-old Mr. Blows said he was, in inverted commas, tired. Mr. Blows, are you master of the understatement?
Yeah, I don't actually remember saying that, but yeah, I imagine I was pretty tired by day 15.
Welcome to the programme, Ben. It's great of you to join us. Really appreciate you coming on tonight. I think if I was going to ask you one question, it would just be a one-word question. It would just be, how?
How? Well, I was expecting why, because most people say why. How, I can probably put a logic to. If it was why, I struggle to find that answer myself. But how, I know how I prepared for it, and it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't a coincidence. I was doing this, and I think a lot of people were quite surprised. I wouldn't say how easy I found it, but how consistent I was, throughout, especially in the first sort of 28 days or so, where everything really went quite well, apart from an injury that was gaining momentum. But, I trained for it effectively for 2 years. I definitely thought about it every single day for 2 years. And for the last 12 months, I thought about it a lot every single day. So it wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't a fluke. A lot of training, a lot of running, a lot of strength and conditioning work. I'm an experienced marathon runner. I've been running marathons for, I think 2005 was my first marathon. So sort of 15, 16 years. So I like to think I know what I'm doing when it comes to preparing for a marathon. For this challenge, there was no blueprint as such. As you can go on YouTube or buy books of how to run a marathon and how to train for a solo marathon and prepare for it and taper off and then run your race, and then you recover. You do what you're meant to do, is recover, and eventually you might think to yourself, I'll have another go at that. They say it's a bit like giving birth. You have to forget your last one to want to try and do it again. But yeah, how I did it, I was as fully prepared as I could have been, I think.
But you're no stranger to unusual challenges, looking back on the BBC News website, because it says you'd taken on the tumble dryer challenge. And my idea of a tumble dryer challenge is trying to sort of load the cottons and the wools separately. But your idea was to run the London Marathon with a tumble dryer on your back. Is that right? That
is correct. Yeah, in 2017, I ran the London Marathon carrying a 25-kilo tumble dryer strapped to my back, and it was for a Guinness World Record, and I got the Guinness World Record and got my name and my photo in the 2018 edition of Guinness Book of Records.
Fantastic. So this unusual challenge, I suppose, if you can call it an unusual challenge, which it certainly is, was to run 31 marathons in 31 days. And you were originally intending to raise £31,000, weren't you, for the charity called Tom's Trust? Just tell us a little bit about Tom's Trust and how you came to start raising money for it.
Tom's Trust was set up by a friend of mine, Debs Whiteley, after their 9-year-old son developed a brain tumour. And I think, I don't want to get this wrong, but I think it was something like 6-7 months later, developed this brain tumour. 6-7 months later, he died. And when his parents left the hospital, there wasn't really a great deal of aftercare. It's sort of, you're out and you just sort of get on with it. So they wanted to do something in his memory. So they set up Tom's Trust to provide psychological support for children who are going through brain tumour treatment, and not just the children, but the families, because, obviously it's a minefield, and thankfully most of us will never have to experience it. But you can imagine the impact it has, not just even on the parents, but the grandparents and the uncles, and it's going to affect the whole family. And it doesn't just affect the child whilst they're receiving treatment, it's post-treatment and everything else. So this is why Debs and Andrew set up Tom's Trust in his memory, to provide psychological support and mental health support for families of children with brain tumours. Now, I know Debs, and I sat and had a coffee with her a couple of 3 years ago, and she told me all about how she'd set this charity up. And I said to her there and then, I'm going to do something one day to raise some money for Tom's Trust. And I didn't really know what it was. I had a couple of ideas, and there's talk of I have this dream of what I want to row across the Atlantic Ocean solo, and there's talk at the time of maybe I'm going to row the Atlantic for Debs, but that never came off. Trying to get sponsorship, and it's just proven impossible at the time. So when I decided that I was going to do this 31 marathons in 31 days, not the first thing I did, when I knew I was definitely doing it, it was actually in July of this year, I messaged Debs and said, look, I've got an idea. I think I can raise some money for you. Can we meet up and have a coffee? Which we did, and it progressed from there. And yeah, as you said, we set out to raise, which I thought was a very ambitious £31,000, because
it sounds a lot.
It was a crazy year last year, and hand on heart, I didn't think we'd raise £31,000. I really didn't. I thought, I've done a few of these events before, and if you hit double figures, you've done really, really well.
But that was Sorry, I was going to say that was significant, wasn't it? Because the £1,000 would support one child and their family for a whole year in a particular way that the charity had set out. So you were to sort of support a child each day of your run, weren't you? And you had a child's name on your shirt each day. I
did, yeah. Each day I ran, I had one of the children that had been helped by Tom's Trust name on the front of my vest. Yeah,
So how do you prepare for this kind of challenge? I mean, just in terms of just what you need to do, both physically and mentally, can you just talk us through anything that you kind of did to prepare for this?
So but basically the key word is adaptation, and what you need to do is become adapted. So when I ran my first marathon in 2005 or 6 or whenever it was, I was like every other person on the planet who ran their first marathon. I couldn't walk the next day. I was avoiding stairs. Sitting down on a toilet was just, you didn't want to do it. I couldn't walk. My legs were fatigued and I was tired. And the last thing I could do, I could barely walk, let alone even jog or shuffle or run. And that was because I trained for a solo event, and this was my one event I was doing, and this is what I trained for. Now, when I was starting to train for this, and as I said, I started training for it 2 years ago, it became about, can I run long on a Saturday? And this is how I started. Can I run long on a Saturday and then get up on a Sunday and run not even long to start with, just a bit more? Yes, my legs are tired. Yes, I'm tired. Yes, I'm hungry. Yes, I don't really want to be doing this. And it just, it was a gradual thing. I'd build up the mileage and start sticking days together, and then I'd rest and I'd recover, and I started really this year, I keep saying this year, last year, I started really sort of building up into blocks, and one of the first things I did was I ran 5 marathons in 10 days. So I'd run a marathon, have a day off, see how my recovery was, what I need to eat. And then the next day I'd run another one, and it was getting progressively harder because I'd already run 3 marathons that week, or I'd already then ran 4.
And that sounds quite easy now in the context of what you've done, but we have to remember that's 3 marathons in a week. It's still extraordinary.
Yeah, I know. And and I don't take it for granted, and I don't want to take anything away from anybody who trains for a marathon, because I know personally how hard it is and how grueling of an event it is. But I just, as I said, I became adapted. So then I started stringing, my first weekend I ever done 2 marathons, one on a Saturday, one on a Sunday. The one on the Sunday was awful and didn't want to be there, but you get it done. And then then I strung together, I think I'd done 15 miles a day for 10 days, and then I'd done 20 miles a day for 5 days. And then my last block of training, which I completed about 6 weeks before I started, was 6 marathons in 6 days, and that went pretty well. And for it was a really good confidence booster, but I was also fully aware that 6 marathons, as hard as that is nothing compared to 10 marathons. And 10 marathons is nothing compared to 15 marathons. And 15 is nothing.
It's scaling it up, isn't it? It's just a phenomenal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm scaling it up, and it's constantly, I'm more tired every single day, and I've still got to run, but I'm more tired every single day, but I still have to run. But
so do you have
that's how I went about it.
Did you have any inspirations in the running or wider sporting world who you look to for either advice or just for inspiration in what they do?
I mean, I've got a couple of people who I'd class them as mentors, I suppose. And when they give me advice, I listen to it. And the guy in Dubai who ran 30 marathons in 30 days, I'd spoken to him quite a bit. although he wasn't doing his for a time, whereas I was, that was the other thing. It was my goal was to run every marathon under 4 hours, because no one had ever done that before. That was my goal. Every single marathon under 4 hours, or my average time under 4 hours for all the marathons. And up until day 29, it was still on. My average was like 354, 355. But then this injury that I'd picked up sort of about day 10, it just got progressively worse. So that went. But yeah, so I spoke to this guy in Dubai quite a bit about it. Like I said, I've got a few people, sporting heroes, mainly sort of come from a boxing background. I suppose in running, Paula Radcliffe is always has been. She actually inspired me to really start running. Part of the reason, I remember watching her run the London Marathon when she broke the women's world record. I think it's 2003, 2004, and it was just a phenomenal achievement. And what a great runner! I've been lucky enough to meet her as well and run with her. And she's definitely my running inspiration.
So what did a typical day look like in December once you were up and running with these marathons every day? But aside from the marathon itself, what would you do in a typical day?
Well, I was still working. I run outdoor fitness classes, and I have a class in Kennet at 6 a.m. Then I have another class in Malton at 9:30, and these classes are an hour long. This was on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays. So on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, I would finish work at 11, get home, get changed, and start the marathon at 11:30. Then I'd finish hopefully in 4 hours, and then I'd have to be back on Severals where I have my evening class for 6 o'clock. So Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I didn't have 10 seconds to blink. Really, it was just full on. My alarm was, I was up at 4:30, and I was finishing work, getting home at 8 o'clock, and trying as much as I could to recover, and more importantly, eat, because that was vital. Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays and Sundays were a lot easier because I wasn't working, and I could be a bit more relaxed about it. I didn't have to get up so early. I could get up, have some food.
Can you eat just crazy amounts of food while you're doing this?
Yeah, but what? It's actually quite difficult. And, I needed sort of 7,000 calories a day. And if I didn't hit 7,000 calories a day, that's going to have a huge knock-on effect to the next day or the day after that. So just like cars and vehicles, your body will not move without fuel. So it was vital, really. And, I struggled to start with to get enough food in. So in the end, I was setting my alarm for midnight, get up, have a pizza, put a pizza in the oven.
Oh, this is my life.
I'd have something prepared. I can remember one night I got up at 1 o'clock in the morning and I had a chicken curry, 2 cans of Coke, full fat Coke. And everyone was like, how on earth did you go back to sleep? Well, I'd eat. I was so tired. I'd literally eat and just go straight back to sleep instantly because I was absolutely exhausted. So it wasn't an issue. Sleeping wasn't an issue in December. Trying to fit enough calories in was, because also once you've been running, you don't really feel like eating straight away. It's usually the next day or two after a marathon that you really want to start eating. Since I've stopped, 20 days ago, I haven't stopped eating. I've just been constantly hungry since I've stopped. But that's fine, and that's to be expected.
So was there anything particularly systematic about the routes that you took? Because we saw on the community board in Burwell that you'd come through Burwell, it seemed every few days, but was there any method in the routes you planned, or did you just think, oh, I fancy this today?
Yeah, it was pretty much like that, because I had planned all the routes. I'd sat and planned them with a lady who was helping me doing the planning, and we planned them all. We spent the morning, right, we're doing this one, the day, even on day one, there was about 1,200 foot of elevation, and I'm thinking to myself, do you really need to be running up every hill in the region? You don't have to make this a hard. So what I ended up doing then was I'd do it the night before. I'd sit down on the computer. Where do I want to go? Where have I been today? I don't want to go back there today. I'm going to go here tomorrow. And, places like Burwell and Ford and stuff, the support was so incredible, like from the people out on the streets. I almost felt guilty when I'm thinking, but the problem is Burwell and Fordham are flat. So if you go that side of Newmarket, it's flat. If you go the other side, like Steptoe, Wood, Dittonway, it's not hilly, but there's hills.
Well, round where you live in Gaisley, that's not flat, is it? Really, I've done
it's not flat. No,
there's quite tough.
Some good climbs around this way. Yeah. So a lot of the time towards the end, especially, I was heading out that way, Isleham, Fordham, Burwell, because it's so much flatter. But it was literally, I would sit down, where do I fancy running tomorrow, and then I would choose it, and that would be the route.
So did the overall project kind of divide in your mind into distinguishable phases, like a kind of, this is fine, the first 10 days, for example, and then the next 10 days, it's tough, and then the final 10 days, how on earth do I get through this? Or did you just sort of take each day at a time?
Well, I took each day as it comes. And what I also did every day I started, I would tell myself as I stood on the start line, this is day one. I'm not interested in what I've already done, whether or not I've run 8 marathons this week or in the last 8 days. And I'm not interested in what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm not going to think about tomorrow or the day after. All I'm thinking of is this is day one. And then when I start the marathon, all I'm thinking of is mile 1. As soon as my watch clicks, mile 1, then I go, right, let's get to mile 2. So you'd always run the mile you're in, or try to. And, it's difficult to do sometimes. But like I said, I wouldn't dwell on what I've done. I'm not going to start feeling sorry for myself and thinking, oh, I've run 500 miles in the last however many days. This is what I'm doing today. I'm going to be running for 4 hours, and I'm going to run this mile. And when I've run this mile, I'm going to get to the next one. And more often than not, I'd say it out loud. And I'd people with me on the bikes and stuff, and they'd probably think, I'd say 15 done, 16's next. And then, 16's done, 17's next.
So were there times when you felt that you just couldn't go on at any point? Because, I mean, it just sounds like a utterly superhuman endeavour. And were there any points where you just doubted that you could pull this off?
Well, on day 29, I went to hospital because my leg had swollen. My leg started sort of deteriorating from day 10 onwards, and I was treating it as best I could. And I know what it needed. It needed rest, and it needed a rest day. But obviously, I couldn't have that. So I was treating it, and I was icing it and keeping it elevated, and taking anti-inflammatories and stuff. But it was getting progressively worse, and the bruising was coming out of my foot. And day 28, the run was okay, but I was in a lot of pain all the way through. And then when I finished day 28, I went home and went to bed that night, and I didn't sleep a wink because I was in so much pain. And I'd taken the painkillers, and it just didn't ease up, and the swelling didn't ease up. So day 29 came around, and I was running with a friend of mine, and I could barely talk to her because I was just in that much pain. I was advised then to go to hospital for an x-ray because somebody looked at it and he said, if there's something broken in there, it was so swollen at this point, the whole of my sort of lower my left leg. If there's something broken in there, he said, you could have sepsis or anything. He said, you need to get it checked out. So I went to A&E, and I'm sitting there thinking, I was just sort of devastated, really, sat in A&E. I had an x-ray, and while I was waiting for the x-ray, I was thinking, well, if it's broken and they put it in a cast, can I do the last 2 days on crutches in a cast? How long is it going to take me? Have I got enough hours in the day? Plus, everything else that's going on. Thankfully, it wasn't broken. It was severe inflammation of the shins and ligament damage in my ankle. So what I then did on day 30 is I walked day 30. So by this point, the 4-hour thing had gone. I'm not worried about that. Well, I was worried about that. I'm not going to lie. But I'm just going to get this finished. So I walked day 30, and I went up the Rolling Mile racecourse, and I walked up and down from the entrance, back again. I think it's 37 times up and down that road on crutches for the first half, but it was just taking me so long on crutches. I had to ditch the crutches and then sort of hobble. And it took me 11 and a half hours. I started at 5 in the morning and finished at 4:30 in the evening or in the afternoon. I was there all day just walking, and I wasn't walking on fresh legs. It wasn't like I just said, well, I'm going to go another 26-mile walk. I'd already ran 29 marathons, so I was utterly exhausted, but I walked it. And then on day 31, the last day, what walking had done is enabled my foot the swelling to just reduce slightly enough, and the pain to subside just slightly enough so that I could run, in the loosest sense of the word, the last day, which I did. And the last day took me 5.5 hours, but I managed to run the whole way, sort of shuffle, jog the whole way around. So
I think we all let out a collective gasp in the village when we saw the description of you going to hospital on the 29th, and then just the extraordinary performance you gave on the 30th, and then that relief when we saw you running again on the 31st, but also a mixture of relief and just disbelief that you could still do that. It must have been a day of just enormous emotion, all in all, that final day.
Yeah, and not even just the final day, the whole of the 31 days, really, from about day 7 onwards, I said to you, I prepared as best as well as I could physically, and I feel I had, and mentally as well. I was very, very strong mentally in December, but emotionally I was nowhere near prepared, and I don't honestly think you can prepare for that level of emotion, and the people that were coming out and the movement that sort of gathered from it. And I'd run around the corner in the middle of nowhere, and thinking, well, I'm not going to see anyone. I'm 4 miles away from Ford. I'm in the middle of nowhere here. It's not going to be. And you turn the corner and there'd be 10 cars there, and the kids are there with banners and flags that they've made, and everyone's bibbing. And this is not the London Marathon. People aren't standing there watching 40,000 runners go by. There's only one person coming past, and they're going to see me for probably 10 seconds go by. And more often than not, I'm not looking that happy about life. I'm a bit grumpy. Well, I tried to be, I really did try to be positive, but I was in a lot of pain a lot of the time. So I try and just give everyone a clap and say, thank you. I really appreciate you coming out here. But, it's December. It's freezing cold. It was Christmas. And people have stood out there to support me who they don't know. It was overwhelming. It really was.
Where did you end?
When we finished on day 31?
Where was your finish line?
Well, because we was under Tier 4 restrictions, with so many people saying, where are you finishing? Where are you finishing? We was going to do it at Adam Brooks Hospital, start and finish there, but we were really concerned about the amount of people that were turning up, and I couldn't do anything about that. What we did in the end is, and we only decided this the night before, was we're going to finish on private property, which we did, and I thankfully have a contact at Godolphin Stables, and so we started in Godolphin Stables on Snowwell Road, and we went out and done the run, and we finished inside there as well. So we had the TV cameras and stuff in there, and we told people the route and sort of said don't congregate too much around Snowwell Road, but there was people there. There was a lot of people up there, but everyone was keeping socially distanced and stuff. But if we hadn't been under lockdown or Tier 4, and we could have, Newmarket Town Council approached me about shutting off the high street for me to finish there, which would have been amazing to do. But because, we then went into the Tier 4, I think it was like 4 days before the end, we couldn't do it. And that's just one of them things. But I think there would have been maybe, I don't know how many people.
It would have been an extraordinary turnout, I think, if we hadn't been in the middle of in the middle of a pandemic. What's been? We're 3 weeks on basically now. We're recording this on the 20th of January. So, what's been the reaction in the last 3 weeks to what you've achieved?
Just crazy, absolute craziness. Nearly every single day, the postman or delivery driver has brought something to my door. Be it a hamper or a crate of beers, which are always welcome, and photographs people have sent me and had printed out and stuff, and just constantly things are coming to us, which I don't expect, and it's not why I did it, but it's very nice. I've had a letter from Boris Johnson. Well, I know he's not everybody's cup of tea, but at the end of the day, when I come out of this, or we all come out of this, I've got a letter from the Prime Minister sort of saying to me, the Prime Minister of our country at the time, saying, well done on your efforts, and not everybody gets one of those.
Yeah,
it is. And,
you're doing podcasts all over the place, I guess, now.
Yeah, podcasts and interviews like this. I've done an interview the other night for some boxing coaches, because I'm a boxing coach as well, to talk about it. I've done numerous podcasts. I think I've got 4 or 5 left to do still, a couple at the week this weekend coming up, and everywhere I go, and I go to Waitrose or Tesco's, and I've got a mask on and I've got my cap on because we're under lockdown and I haven't had my hair cut for 4 weeks. People are still saying, oh, well done, congratulations. I went running yesterday in Burwell, actually, and I went out into the fen and heading out towards Lode. Desolate, middle of nowhere. There's a family of 4 walking. They've stopped. They've seen me coming, and all of a sudden they've stopped and they've gone, well done. And they're saying to the kids, this is the guy, and it's just...
As I said, you are a household name now in the region. It's very exciting. So, moment of truth then. What is the grand total? Because you set out to raise 31,000. Where have you got to as of the 20th of January?
As of the 20th of January, as you said, we set out to raise 31,000. I had a look earlier before we came on. And with the gift aid that's to be added at the end, it's £189,331.
That is absolutely phenomenal. So Tom's Trust must be absolutely over the moon with what you've done.
I think they are. Well, why wouldn't they be? And I think another thing which we never knew would happen is the awareness of Tom's Trust. Everybody knows. Everybody who knew I was running in December knew that I was running for Tom's Trust. So many more people are now aware of Tom's Trust, which, for a small local independent charity, it's priceless, really. But
yes, I mean the awareness and the profile might be worth as much to them in future donations. Who knows? That's just what you've already
exactly
done.
And I've been made an ambassador of Tom's Trust. They only have their children as ambassadors. So I'm the first adult. They asked me if I wanted to do it, and I said of course I would. So I'm their first adult ambassador. So I'll be working with Tom's Trust again in the future, no doubt.
Well, so by the time we broadcast, it might have gone up again, and we'll stay in touch with how it's going and keep our listeners up to date.
Well, there was a time when it broke 31, then it broke 50, and then it broke 75, and you start thinking, could we hit £100,000 here? Is that possible? And we actually hit £100,000 on Christmas Day. I'd do a little video before I started running every day, and I'd never ask people to do anything. I'd just say keep supporting us. But on Christmas Day, I think we was on 96, 97,000, and I said, look, this is what we're on. Share this video. Do me a favour. Tell your friends. Tell the world. Let's get it up to 100,000. And then we started engaging. We ran down the hill towards Ashley. By the time we got into Ashley, 14 minutes later, guys on the bike were going, yeah, it's going up. It's got 100,000.
And all of a sudden, 200,000 seems possible.
I don't think so. But then I never thought we'd hit 31, and I never thought we'd hit 50, and I never thought we'd hit 100. So I don't know. The momentum is definitely slowing down with it. You know, there's a few people. There's a lot of people who are out doing a challenge in January where they're running or cycling 2.6 miles every day as opposed to 26. You know, and that's raised £1,200-1,300, and they're doing that for sponsorship. So I don't know. I think you know, we've had some big donations come in. I think that's finished, but you just don't know. You know, every day surprises me, and every day surprises me still. It's
been just a sensational achievement, and I think it just gave so much joy as well to the villagers at that point in December when things were feeling a bit bleak, as indeed they still are with the pandemic. What about future projects then, Ben? Before we finish off, you mentioned rowing the Atlantic. Is that still a serious dream?
It's a serious dream. I'd love to do it. I really do. I want to. You know, I had an opportunity a couple of years ago where I could have done it as a pair. I don't want to do it as a pair. I want to do it solo because, you know, if you do it as a pair, then technically if one person's rowing and one person's resting, you've only rowed half an ocean. So I want to do it solo. It'll probably take about 4 months. I don't know where I'm at with that. It's something I want to do, and it's not cheap to do. Probably best part of £100,000 to do. But you know, it would be a sort of global thing, and it would raise a lot of money as well. So I don't know. I'd like to do that. I've got a couple. You know, I've had 31 marathons in the back of my mind for a couple of years now. I've got another running challenge in the back of my mind, which is, you know, I've started thinking about quite a bit lately, and that's from Land's End to John O'Groats. I think it's 870 miles or something silly. The world record is 9 days. I think that's beyond me, but you never know, do you? You never know.
Is that an exclusive scoop for Burwell Community Radio? That
I think it probably is. I think I've told a few people, but I don't think I've said it publicly. So whether that will happen again, you know, that's, if you think about how you plan that logistically. Now, if you run 90 miles a day, which you'd have to do, and then you've got 6-7 hours to get in your hotel. Your clothes have got to be there to get changed, and you know, for everything. So you need a hell of a support team behind you and support crew, and you need someone on the bike. So logistically, how I do that, I do not know. But yeah, I said that about 31.
I think the world's the oyster now. It's been a sensational achievement, Ben. And as I say, you've given so much pleasure, I think, to Burwell and all the surrounding villages in the way that you're running through and creating that sense of excitement back in December. So congratulations again. And thank you ever so much for coming on Burwell Community Radio to tell your story. I know that our listeners will be really grateful for you coming on. So thank you and all the best.
No problem. Thanks for having me on. And I also want to just give a huge heartfelt thanks to the people of Burwell, because they came out on day one. They was there on that corner when I came out of Heath Road, and every single time I ran through Burwell, it was just incredible. And on Christmas Day, we ran through from one end of the village to the other. There was people out, you know, and for them to be out on Christmas Day, clapping and cheering, just to see me go by for a few seconds was, you know, I'll never ever forget that. So thank you very much.
Ben Blows, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Burwell Community Radio with local news, views, and interviews. Village Voices.